Welcome back to Bumblebee. I'm your host, Kyle McWaters. Hey, all this ufology's got me thinking. Are these people just wackos or what? Beings and crafts coming from another planet? Yeah, right. Well, apparently, yeah, they're right. Here's the top 10 famous alien sightings recorded in NASA history. Number 10. Al Worden. American test pilot, engineer, and NASA astronaut Alfred Merrill Worden, the pilot for the Apollo 15 lunar missions in 1971. One of the 24 people that have gone to the moon. Woohoo! He orbited it 74 times. Well, he was the first to even drive a moon car. Worden remained at NASA until 1975, and then it gets a little weird. Recently, on a morning show, they asked Worden, "Why do we keep going back to the moon?" He paused and said, quote, "Survival. Survival of our species." When pressed on aliens, he said, "You know, we are the aliens, right? We just think there's somebody else. We're the ones who came from somewhere else because somebody else had to survive. They got in a little spacecraft and they came here and they landed and they started civilization here. And if you don't believe me, go get books on the ancient Sumerians and see what they have to say about it." End quote. Yeah, that's not terrifying at all, Al. Number 9. Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Dean Mitchell was a U.S. Navy officer, aviator, test pilot, engineer, NASA astronaut, and of course, ufologist. Ufology is the pseudo term for somebody who studies UFOs. I don't think there's like a degree you can just get that in. If so, where? I'm signing up. Just needed a name for it, I guess? I don't know. The lunar module pilot of Apollo 14 in 1971, guy clocked 9 hours working on the moon. He was the 6th person to walk on the moon as well. Mitchell publicly expressed his opinions that he was sure that there were thousands of UFOs recorded since the early 1940s, apparently belonging to other planets. Thousands of them. NBC conducted an interview in 1996. He talked about meeting with officials from 3 different countries who said that they had met ETs in person. Quote, "The evidence for alien contact is very strong and classified by governments who are covering up visitations and the existence of alien bodies, specifically in places like Roswell, New Mexico." Sorry, do you mind if I just see his credentials one more time? Thank you so much. Number 8. James McDivitt. James Alton McDivitt is an American test pilot, Air Force pilot, engineer, and NASA astronaut who flew both in the Gemini and Apollo programs. McDivitt was selected by NASA for the Gemini 4 mission, and in 1965, he saw, filmed, and photographed an object, which approached the Gemini 4 as they were orbiting Earth over Hawaii. Apparently, the UFO had a long arm sticking out of it. Quote, "I was flying with Ed. He was sleeping, we were drifting, when suddenly an object appeared in the window. A cylindrical object, white." The film was then sent back to NASA and reviewed by NASA film technicians in 1975. It looked like a white beer can with a pencil sticking out of it. Yeah, he tried for years to get the word out about the phenomenon, but NASA lost those pictures apparently. Oh, that James, he's a crazy one up there in space with all those degrees he has. What a wacko. Number 7. Dark Side of the Moon. Not just an absolute banger of an album, also one of the most terrifying, mysterious places in our galaxy. The dark side of our moon. Since the 1950s, NASA has seen and heard some pretty weird stuff back there. See, once you sign that non-disclosure, they kinda own ya, you know? Despite what you may have heard, it's true that the Apollo 10 astronauts did hear some interesting sounds behind the moon, described as outer space type music. Audio recordings from the Apollo 10 mission, astronaut Gene Cernan asks John Young if he hears that. Gene calls it music and says it even sounds outer spacey sounding. Young says, "We're gonna have to find out about that, because nobody's gonna believe us." Hey man, no one believes anyone who's gone up there, so don't take it personally. Astronauts go through visual and audio testing like the Navy SEALs. They know what they're doing. If they say Angel by Shaggy is playing back there, I'm believing them. Number 6. Leland Melvin. American engineer and NASA astronaut on board the space shuttle Atlantis, selected by NASA in 1998. This guy's put in time with mission after mission. Melvin has over 565 hours in space. Quite the practice at the whole floating around thing, I'd say. When Leland then was pressed about otherworldly visitors, he said he had seen something translucent, curved, and organic looking when he was working with fellow astronaut Randy Bresnik. The pair called the ground to ask NASA what it could be, and NASA's response was, probably ice, probably ice. Nice and scientific, Houston. Thanks for that. Mr. Melvin dismissed this and figured it was just NASA's explanation to cover it up. Like, who's more qualified here? That's all I'm asking. When the most qualified people are like, yeah, I can't tell if that's frozen water or a spaceship. Either they shouldn't be up there at all, or they need some more Windex on those windows, NASA. Number 5. Ivan Vagner. Astronaut Ivan Vagner was on the ISS as a first-timer in 2020. You think they do trades initiations to the rookies up there? Like no gravity and buckle you when you sleep? What do you think? He and fellow Russian Anatoly Ivashinin are working with Chris Cassidy up there, the American commander of said expedition. Vagner was then orbiting the Earth and might have actually captured footage of UFOs, better known now as UAPs. The aurora lights behind Earth's beautiful curves was being recorded, and it was seen. He labeled the video Space Guests. Vagner then tweeted the vid, the aurora australis near Antarctica and Australia, and then this blob of organized lights shows up. Of course, NASA didn't follow up. What are they gonna say? Yeah, that's swamp gas, birds, balloon, grass, cars, something up there. I don't know. Cut the feed. Cut the feed! Number 4, Moonwalk. Yeah, so apparently the footage our parents and also 650 million people across the globe watched in 1969 was not the original footage. Hold up, what? Yeah, apparently what everyone saw on every television set across the globe wasn't as 4K as NASA's end. A man by the name of Gary George came across some very, very old tapes that might be proof as to what NASA sees and what they hear on their end. It's a little different than what we see. Gary George bought 218 surplus government tapes, 3 reels labeled Apollo 11 EVA. He auctioned them at Sotheby's, first generation of the moonwalk. So hold on. NASA just had a clearer copy of this the whole time? I get it, maybe they had a bigger budget. I'm thinking so we can't see what's in the background, or what's flying in the background, or any stars in the background. Yeah, I just wonder how long it's gonna take before Robert Bigelow or Tom DeLonge get their hands on that. Hey Mom, there's something in the background, guys, pay attention. Number 3, Gordon Cooper. Leroy Gordon Cooper Jr. was an American engineer, test pilot, US Air Force pilot, and the youngest of the 7 original astronauts in Project Mercury. You know the pictures, it's the old school tinfoil suits. 1963, Cooper piloted the longest and last Mercury spaceflight, Mercury Atlas 9. 34 hours in space. The first American to spend an entire day in space, the first to sleep in space, and in Cooper's autobiography, Leap of Faith, he recounted his relationship with the Air Force and NASA and their relationship to the UFO conspiracy. Cooper claimed to see his first UFO while flying over Germany. He said that there were hundreds of reports made by pilots, many coming from military on radar. In 1978, he even testified before the United Nations on the topic. Radar operators, fighter pilots, fellow astronauts. He was a strong advocate for disclosure up until his passing. Number 2, Lost in Space. During the 60s, the space race was on between the Americans and the Russians. Like a good old hockey game, huh? Those two, always at it. The first to figure out what it is to put something or someone up in a little metal box. It was actually the Soviets that secured many of the early victories. While NASA's efforts were widely publicized, of course, sometimes the Soviets made it a point to never announce a mission until days after it was completed, and of course, successful. This allowed them to maintain control over information. Enter stage right, the Giudica Cordiglia brothers from Italy. Former amateur radio operators who apparently caught Russian audio recordings which allegedly proves the Soviets covered up cosmonauts' failed missions in the early 1960s. Apparently she's saying, help, help, I feel hot, am I going to crash? Yo, that is absolutely horrifying. If this is the real deal and the Soviets sent a woman into space that maybe didn't come back, this proves that whatever happens in space, stays in space. We're only told what we're supposed to hear. Number 1, Buzz Aldrin. American astronaut, engineer, fighter pilot with a Doctor of Science in astronautics. This guy is overqualified. 3 spacewalks in 1966, Gemini 12 mission. As the lunar module Eagle pilot on the 1969 Apollo 11 mission, he and mission commander Neil Armstrong were the first 2 to land on the moon. There was something out there, close enough to be observed, and what it could be, according to Aldrin on Apollo 11 to the moon, he observed a light out of the window that appeared to be moving alongside them. But what could it have been other than another spacecraft from another country, or maybe even another world? It was either the rocket that had separated from us, or the 4 panels that moved away when we extracted the lander. After he returned home from his missions, he was convinced that he saw aliens while he was out there. Credentials aside, Guy took a lie detector test, which he passed with flying colors. In an interview with C-SPAN, Buzz talked about the future potential of the Earth's moon for humanity. He added a little extra info that might have ignited the spark to go back, regarding a certain monolith on the moon. Quote, visit the moon Phobos of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato object that goes around the moon once every 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're gonna say, who put that there? Yeah, I'll be the first one, Buzz. Who did put that there? Hey, we hope you enjoyed that video. I've been Kyle McWaters, and we'll see you next time on Bumblebee for some more.